his tenure as pastor at St. Thomas Catholic Church, Pohl oversaw the renovation of the church and the historically accurate renovation of Flagey House log home on the church grounds. 2 women were injured Sunday afternoon in a single vehicle crash about at the 19-mile marker in the westbound lanes of the Bluegrass Parkway. 2007 Honda left the roadway and rolled over in a ditch. Nelson County EMS, Bardstown Fire Department, and police were dispatched at 1:24 p.m. for the accident with possible rescue of the occupants. EMS transported the women age 18 and 45 to Hardin Memorial Hospital in Elizabethtown for evaluation and treatment. That's the latest top of the hour on this Monday morning, and brought to you today by Bardstown Auto Wreckers. Bardstown Auto Wreckers, Springfield Road, saving you money on auto parts.
Bardstown's up-to-date weather.
And good Monday morning to you, everyone. This weather update is brought to you by Lebanon Car World, 703 West Main Street in Lebanon, Kentucky, on the former Club 68 property. Today's high temperature, cloudy skies, 86 degrees. Tonight, 66 and partly cloudy. Tomorrow, morning clouds giving way to afternoon sun with a high of 86 tomorrow. Scattered thunderstorms on Wednesday, 81, and scattered thunderstorms possible on Thursday with a high 79.
Thank you, Fred. Good morning, everybody. This is WBRT, Bardstown, BRTV, Channel 19, Bardstown Cable. Time now for the program brought to you by McCoy Hiestand, attorneys at law. And surprise, surprise, we have both in studio and via telephone. I bet Shiela up in wherever you are today didn't realize that.
Yes, I'm in Louisville.
You're in Louisville. Well, we've got Chad is just ran into studio also with us. So we have the whole gang on board.
Good morning.
Let's see. Are you there, Shiela?
I am.
Okay.
I am here.
All right.
You should be able to hear Chad if I've got all the buttons pushed correctly. So, Shiela,
Yes.
tell us about, before we go any further, Chad.
Let me do the disclaimer.
Let's do the disclaimer.
All right. Glad to talk to you about anything and everything. Of course, we can't give legal advice over the radio, but be happy to answer your questions in a general manner. And if it is something important that you need legal advice on, give us a call at the office. It's 1-800-254-4444 or locally 233-8385. And the number here to call us on the air if you want to talk to us is 348-2222. Be glad to take your calls.
All right. Shiela.
Give him the right number this time, Chad?
I did.
Sheila, you told us that we have the I guess the word of the day is kind of a phrase of the day, or it's a what we call a proper noun. It's
there you go.
It's called the Hague Convention.
Yes, sir.
And was that a convention of a bunch of? Never mind. Tell us about it and how serious and important it can be to those.
The Hague Convention is kind of interesting. It actually started with Tsarist Russia, and it had to do with war crimes and what have you. Started in the 1800s. There was one in 1899. Then Theodore Roosevelt did one in 1907, which was kind of put on hold by the beginnings of World War I. You know, we didn't get involved until a little later, but it was going on over in Europe. And it's progressed, and what it was originally was to help the countries monitor one another to prevent war crimes, which we all know that Hitler violated all over the place in World War II. But then as it evolved and it took it on its own life, the Hague Convention became the way for all countries, if you got hurt in another country or if someone came over here and got hurt in the United States from another country, to be able to sue foreign corporations. So whenever you are either in the military and you're abroad, and while you're off duty, acting as a civilian in the foreign country, and you get hurt in a car accident or a slip and fall or something like that, or if you're on vacation in Mexico or the Dominican Republic or somewhere that maybe Cuba in a few years, you can actually get service. And service means once we on someone that's a defendant that doesn't live in this country, you have to use the Hague Convention.
And are there any countries that do not observe the, I guess you would say, the
Convention?
the convention?
Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting question, because what's happened is they're supposed to. It is, right now we are at relative peace internationally. It doesn't seem that way. But in terms of world wars, things like that, when you're dealing with corporate structures, we can typically use the Hague Convention to get service. Now, can we do that in Iraq? Can we do that in Palestine? I can't tell you. I think that's going to deal with more of a, instead of a, hey, yeah, we agree that we're members of the Hague, it'll be more of an issue of, are we willing to acknowledge it on today, Monday, August 17th, because we're mad at the United States.
Right.
So I think it's one of those situations.
All right, Sheila,
I
give us...
luckily, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, put this in real practical terms. Tell everybody, I know you had a case recently up in federal court in Pennsylvania, and you don't have to give any of the parties, but kind of give us a fact scenario how, for the average listener here, might actually run into the Hague Convention.
Right, and luckily the average listener wouldn't. Their lawyer would, and their lawyer would pull their hair out and go crazy using it. But here's what happens. For instance, in my case, I had a nice lady who had gone to a Mexican all-inclusive resort, had been advertised all over the Internet in the United States through a corporation that does the advertising here in the United States, and it was an American corporation, but the hotel itself was owned by a Mexican corporation. So when she slipped and fell there, and it was negligent construction, it was clearly poor construction, poor design, she ended up with ankle fractures that required surgery and pins and all those things. She did that when she came back to the United States. She came to me and she said, hey, I need to sue, and she just thought we could go to the travel agency and sue them. Well, no, we can't just go to the travel agency. So we tried to get creative, and we sued in the federal court in Pennsylvania, where the corporation that does all the marketing, and through Discovery we got their contracts, has a lot of control over how that business is run. It's one of these resorts that there's resorts all over the Caribbean in different countries, and they control how they live up to certain standards. So we sued them in federal court in Pennsylvania. Well, if we'd gone farther, we were actually able to get the matter resolved, but if we'd gone farther and we had to join the actual Mexican corporation, the only way, we could amend the complaint, name the Mexican corporation that owned the actual hotel, to get that served on them, to make them have to answer, because that's the only way you can get someone to have to answer a complaint, is they get handed the papers by a process server, and it gets sent back to the court saying, yes, they got served with this complaint. The only way that they have to answer is I would have had to gone through the Hague Convention, follow those rules and regulations to make sure that they got served and brought in. Then they would have moved to dismiss on an abundancy of grounds. But when you get, and this is another issue, and I know this is getting a little complex and highfalutin, but it's something that we have to deal with, because you think, hey, I'm going to this really swell place, and it's all-inclusive, and they have catamarans, and they have spas, and what have you. Well, if you fall there, all of a sudden, they're not real interested in you, because they're going to say the law of Mexico, if you fell in Mexico, should apply, because that's where the fall occurred. And so the law of Mexico is, well, if you're 1% at fault, you lose. So if you're walking and you're not necessarily paying it, let's say you're looking at your cell phone. Let's say they've created this big hole in the ground, and it's all their fault, but you're looking at your cell phone and don't see the big hole in the ground. So let's say they're 90% at fault. If you're 10% at fault, you get nothing. So even if I had been able to, we'd had to go through the Hague Convention, sued that Mexican corporation, then they would have gotten off the hook, because Mexican law would apply, and it's called pure contributory fault, which means if you're 1% at fault, you're out.
So if you have too many of the all-inclusive drinks,
Yes, stay away from the all-inclusive drinks. And if you do drink, then make sure you're just sitting on a lounge chair drinking them.
Well, it's spooky because so many people do travel around the country, whether around the world, I should say, for whether it be vacation or business.
Right.
To know that should you fall ill or fall, in this case, you do have a recourse, but it could be a recourse as historic as the Hague Convention.
And it's certainly
that's right.
And it's certainly a very complicated procedure. You know, the Hague Convention, I think, is going to not only give us the way that we can go about suing them, but now they're going to have to respond to us. You know, for example, even within the United States, we have this concept of personal jurisdiction. So if I've never been to Wisconsin and you sued me in Wisconsin, I don't have a duty to necessarily answer that because Wisconsin is not a governing authority over me. And that's what the Mexican corporations would likely say is, hey, America, sorry, we're Mexico. You know, we're a Mexican corporation. We don't have to follow your rules. Your court system can't hold us accountable. But no, we can. If your country has signed on to the Hague Convention, now you've agreed to play by more of a, and you'll hear it referred to sometimes as quote-unquote international law. You know, that this is what creates international contracts, gives, you know, if you're a corporation in America and you want to enter into a business deal in China, how do you know it's going to be enforced? Hague Convention, you know, that kind of stuff.
And that's if the country wants to play nice. And
well, that's right.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they, you know, it protects their citizens as well as it protects us. And
it's a
so
two-way street.
That's right. That's right.
Because our laws.
I don't know if, go ahead.
No, I was going to say our laws are different than their laws, and even though ours may be better, there may be some situations where ours aren't as protective.
Right.
And you know what's interesting is you say their laws might not be as protective as our laws. When this happens, you get into a battle of a choice of law. Which place has the most contacts? And that's American law in determining choice of law. Who has the most contacts?
Right.
So what ideally you want to do is to be in a position to find an American corporation that's somehow involved so you can file it in the American court system and make them subject to our jurisdiction so that we know how to handle the choice of laws.
So
It's
Sheila,
all
let's say you're on vacation, you're down in the Caribbean, you're in Mexico, and something happens, whether it's a car wreck with the rental car, it's something happens with a slip and fall. What do folks need to do while they're in the foreign country to make sure they're protecting themselves?
That's what's most important. One, if you're in a car accident or it's a slip and fall, get your cell phone out, or if you're hurt, get your spouse or your friends that are with you and get pictures of everything related to the scene. In this case, I wanted pictures of the step, of the design, of everything around it, from far away, from close up, to get a perspective of where it is in the resort, step 100 yards away to get a picture of the whole area, circle, photos. And then you want to go to the management and say, I've had a slip and fall. I need to do an incident report. I need to have this documented. Or I've had a car accident. I need to get the police report if there's a police report. If you need to go down to the police department and fill out, take a translator with you, go down there and fill out a civilian report. Get whatever documentation you can to show that it actually happened on the time and the date that it occurred, because a lot of the defenses are, oh, we don't have any documentation of this. We can't prove that it happened here. So you want to make sure that you get it documented. If you're on a resort, they have a policy and procedure in place to have an incident report, to have it reported to the management. You can do a letter on their letterhead on that date and make a copy of it and give it to them and ask them to sign it. They may not sign it. You can't force them to sign it. You want to get as many people involved as possible. A lot of times, again, if you're at a resort, they're going to have a resort physician. Make sure you're seen by that physician, because that creates a medical record, and tell them, I'd like a copy of that medical record to take home to my doctor in the States. They know what treatment I got here. They don't have to know that you want to use it for litigation necessarily, and it's just a good idea for your doctor to have it anyway. So you want to get that. Then you want to get It may be posted somewhere in the hotel. It may be on a brochure in the room. It may be on the inside of, the information about the hotel that's sitting in your room. You want to get as much information about the person or the entity that you're dealing with while you're there. Because once you get back to the States, it's really hard for your attorney and yourself to find out, hey, who's the real owner of this place? Whose name is this in? So you want to get, how we have posted, if you go to a grocery store, you may not notice this, but next time you'll notice it. You'll walk in and you'll see a sign up there as to who the owner is and what the name of the corporation is that owns it. There may be signs like that. At the hotel, at the front of the hotel, if they have awards, it says 5-star award awarded to whatever, and it'll have under there the name of the corporation that owns it. Anything you can find that identifies who is the actual owner of that establishment or the owner of the vehicle. For instance, if you're in a car accident, say, hey, do you have some proof of insurance? Can I have a copy of take a picture of your driver's license? Now, with the advent of cell phones, you can do that all right there at the scene. Take pictures of everything. You might not understand what it says, if it's in a foreign language, but get pictures. Put, again, the driver's license, the registration, the license plate of the vehicle you were involved with. If it's a cab, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a cab in a foreign country, but it's terrifying in and of itself. The picture of anything that's on the inside of the cab, the picture on the outside that shows what the cab company was and what the phone number was. You just document everything, because I will tell you, by the time you get home to the United States and you have the surgery that you need and you've been on the pain meds that you needed for what happened, you're not going to remember any of this.
Right.
And nowadays they say a picture's not worth a whole lot, because it can be doctored. But I'm telling you, a picture for purposes of documentation of the event is worth 1,000 words.
I'd also throw in there, Sheila, to make sure you're writing down names and as many phone numbers as you can get of the folks that you're dealing with.
Yes, because, for instance, let's say someone comes up and says, I'm the manager. Say, do you have a business card? What's your name? What is your exact title? How long have you been here? Where's your office? Do you have a personal number that I can reach you if I need to get in touch with you while I'm here in my room or when I'm back in the States? Anybody that helps you, because, for instance, in the case that I had, the 3 people that came to help my lady no longer worked there. So you need as much information as you get from them. They're probably not going to give you their personal home address and cell phone, but you want their full name. And you might say, how old are you? You've been so helpful, thank you. You're so responsible for a young person. How old are you? Just so you've got an age, you've got a name, you've got where they were last employed, so that if we have to, we can find them.
One of the things that's, you mentioned this was some medical, but I've always heard insurance and other policies and things that we have in the United States sometimes aren't working or aren't good when you're in foreign countries or doing certain things. Should we be also cognizant of our insurance, whether it be health insurance or automobile insurance?
Of your own insurance?
Of our own insurance,
absolutely. Absolutely. But before you go, if you're going to rent a car in a foreign country, you want to know exactly what your car insurance says before you go. Call your agent before you go and say, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to, Paris. I'm going to be stationed in Paris, and while I'm there, I may rent a car. What kind of coverage do I have when I'm in a foreign country? What do I need to bring with me? Do I need to bring my proof of insurance with me? Do you have some things that I need to have with me to show that I do have insurance? I recommend, now when I'm in the States, and I fly a lot for work, if I go to Baltimore, I don't get the insurance on the rental cars here. But when I'm in a foreign country, you better believe I pay that little extra bit to get the insurance coverage that they have.
Right. The other thing you can do, too, is keep in mind, if you are going to travel to a foreign country, the various U.S. embassies, you can let them know you're coming ahead of time keep their number around. They're going to have folks, boots on the ground, so to speak, that can help you if you do run into a situation. And it's going to always be good to get those people involved. They're going to have contacts and whatnot. And unfortunately, I think, when you're on vacation and you're hurt, it's not anything that you're going to be thinking about. But somebody in your party, if they at least had that information at their fingertips, could give them a call.
And another thing, if you're going to travel, make copies of your passport, make copies of your photo ID in the event that your wallet gets lost or stolen, so that when you do go to the embassy, you have photocopies, even color copies of everything that you had with you. I'm not saying that that's going to you're not going to be able to board a plane with that.
Right.
But when you go to the embassy, you can say, look, here's all my information that got stolen, and keep that obviously in a place separate from where you're keeping your passport. Keep it in your suitcase or keep it in the safe. Whenever I travel, I always put my passport in a safe, because that's the one thing that you do not want to get lost or stolen.
Now, the other thing that you might run up against with an injury in a foreign country is because you're on potentially one of these prepackaged outings, a lot of them contain United States mandatory arbitration clauses. And we've talked about those before. Cruise ships are the worst. Whenever you buy a ticket to a cruise, whether you realize it or not, you have already agreed that if anything happens, whether it's in international waters, on a foreign country, or once you're back at port, you don't have the right to go to court. You don't have the right to get your lawyers involved. They've made you arbitrate. So pay attention to that. I think you're going to see it more and more and more as we go through the world, and it's certainly not anything you want to agree to if you have the opportunity before you buy it to cross that out or initial it somehow that you don't agree to the arbitration clause.
Arbitration clauses are the trend of the future. Everything you sign, from cruises to nursing home admissions to hospital admissions to buying a car, they're all going to have an arbitration clauses. And what that does is it does away with your right to a trial by jury. So now there's some law out there that says that it's supposed to be explained to you, but there's also law out there that says you have an obligation to read what you're signing.
And none of us do that, especially when it's the 3 pages of fine print on the back.
Right. I mean, who does that?
You might want to get in the habit of scanning it, and if you just see the word arbitration in there, cross it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Say, sorry, not going to sign this.
Arbitration is not always a bad thing, because in your guys' jobs, many of the final verdicts or the finalization of it is basically been arbitrated. But when you are signing up, then you're going to get it whether you like it or not, is when it becomes potentially the bad thing.
Right, and don't confuse, though, mediation with arbitration.
Okay, I think we've gone.
Right.
Yep.
And 90% of ours get resolved, 100% get resolved either with a jury trial or a mediation. And a mediation is a voluntary process. Both sides come to the table with an intermediary, somebody who's going to listen to the evidence and kind of say, hey, you know what? That's a good point there, and you've got a good point here, and try to make everybody be reasonable. Arbitration, on the other hand, though, is you have chosen, well, you didn't choose it because it's kind of taken out of your hands, but there is now somebody who is going to rule, and that person is not a judge. They have no legal training. They're literally just an arbitrator.
And you don't have any recourse?
That's right. You're bound by their decision.
Okay.
You cannot appeal their decision. Courts will enforce their decision. The federal level, it's the Federal Arbitration Act. States have a similar act that says if you've arbitrated, it's binding. And the real problem is, I think this frustrates folks, but our law, as we sit here right now, our court law is such that, we have 2,000 years of wisdom built into the system. Everybody knows that phrase, hearsay. Oh, that's hearsay. Well, hearsay is an evidentiary rule, and that's important, and you want it in there because it keeps people from being a false witness against somebody. And all your constitutional rights that we have, all of those are gone when you arbitrate. Anything and everything can come in. And so your ability to get a fair and impartial trial is severely limited through arbitration.
Right. And I will tell you, because the argument's made, arbitration is much faster and it's much more expedient. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
the studies are showing now that arbitration takes just as long, or most oftentimes longer, than a case that goes through the litigation process. So, and it costs just as much.
And with mediation, both parties typically have to, neither one are going to be completely happy at the end, but they're both going to agree to it. Arbitration,
that's right.
You may be happy, or you very well may not be.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
because it's binding. It can be held against you. And as to mediation, that's when you go voluntarily. I've always been told the best mediation is when nobody comes away happy. It means both sides have given more than they've wanted to give, or take a little less than they wanted to take, which means we've come to some kind of
compromise.
Right. And that's what mediation is all about. And really, that's what any kind of settlement is about. It's about compromise, because no one ever gets everything that they want. I think there's been a handful of times that I've been surprised at what an insurance company has offered.
Yeah.
I've been like, oh crap, we need to take this now before they realize what's going on. But usually it's compromise on both sides.
Yeah. So I should write a note to myself, Roth. Mediate is not arbitrate.
There you go.
Or mediate, don't arbitrate.
Always.
Because that could sneak up on somebody. Because it hadn't been that long ago that you schooled me on that, and I've already forgot. All right, let's tell everybody how they find McCoy and Hiestand Attorneys at Law. Those who have been watching on Channel 19 have seen basically your website that's very active and gives everybody some information. So let's give everybody the update and idea where to find you.
All right, so we are on the web at McCoyandHiestand.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can, of course, just come see us. We have two offices in Louisville. We're 108 Browns Lane. It's down near the malls, and in Bardstown, 114 South 3rd Street, over here by the radio station. Happy to see anybody anytime. Just come on down. And if you want to call us, you can reach us at 1-800-254-4444, or give us a call locally at 233-8385, and that actually rings for both offices. So one number gets you both places.
And Shiela, I want to tell you that Chad had pointed out this article to me in his last visit here that was written about you, and I had an opportunity to go grab it and read it, and a magnificent article on you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks.
So you have an Iron Man coming up, and which I knew about, but what a great article that the gentleman in Lexington wrote about you.
Well, thanks. And we have a fundraiser coming up Saturday. I'm trying to raise money and doing the Ironman to give back to my community, because there's so many local nonprofits that come out and man the aid stations, and they volunteer to do that. In exchange, they get paid a contribution to their nonprofit. So I'm trying to raise some money so that their contributions can be a little bit higher, and they have some money. There's a lot of churches and a lot of schools, a lot of really great places. So, and another thing that we have coming up in September is we're going to go to the Ronald McDonald House and make brunch for them one morning. For those folks that don't know about the Ronald McDonald House, there are a lot of them all over the country, and they are connected to Children's Hospital, so that when someone's child is in the hospital and you're coming from out of town, for instance, if you live in Bullitt County and your child has to go to U of L for medical care, the Ronald McDonald House will give you a place to stay, so you don't have to leave your child, because you don't want your little baby there. And for me, my son's 17; he's my baby. So you don't want your child there scared and by himself, and so they provide a home for the parents and for other siblings, and they obviously have to eat. They have playrooms. So we're going to go there in September as a firm and hopefully make a good meal. I hope that I'm going to buy something, because I'm a terrible cook. But yeah, I will help cook so long as people tell me what to do.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us via telephone. Chad, thank you and the judge or whoever got you out of court quick enough to get here. And we'll have a word from our friends at McCoy and Hiestand, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks,
Ross.
The following is a paid advertisement.
Hi, I'm Chad McCoy with McCoy and Hiestand, Attorneys at Law. My family and I have lived in this community for a long time, and we all know that when one of our neighbors is wronged, we all hurt. That's why I've been fighting for the people of this community. Whether it's the result of an auto accident or nursing home neglect, I take each case personally. I'm located in the heart of downtown Bardstown on South 3rd Street, and you're welcome to just walk on in. My team is ready to listen and make it right for you.